كأزخ خيدي رئيو سلخا كأننا بمعقار نشتوي كلها شم عبري هلو نخبرت السمكار سوق بتاي كملون عبرها تزلني تجرقان عالكا كأزخ خيدي رئيو سلخا كأننا بمعقار نشتوي كلها شم عبري هلو نخبرت السمكار سوق بتاي كملون عبرها تزبلني تجرقان عالكا ماي نقر ولاديت حوج بوج كبلكي قدني خون ونكسر معكي تشاحة ورحي أما تنكتيكي كدت عمت ونا زبانكي قناد جينا تحبني إخي ولادكي موتن تاريخ بتفلكي تنقل ماما أنا بقللكي نزقك حزين ماما تاريخنا يولادكي كيف تنك تقسم ماما بجلفة أخر بحري تبعني رو قرات بعنتبو تطعم بعني حمس حبو نبر قول دخام زي عجب تركف وعيلهم كمقطير تقرب أرتتح قول عطامني عسب جيقنا ودخنا يتنحن شيء حلفو ماما تنايها أقر مقصد تبلالا أديها سنبسا تبلالا أديها صبرمي كوربيدا تبلالا قاتلو مريت مسقاتلو سماي بارئنا توكتي مسقاوكاو تاتحاي تنك مسواتو تنيف كنسبني ساعة نتأماي ماما بزايف أجموني تبلالا أديها سنبسا تبلالا أديها صبرمي كوربيدا تبلالا ولدنا يبحثني حساس للدعيني نسيخون كتكا كان بيني ولودي ትብላላ ኣዲኻ ሳንበሳ ትብላላ ትብላላ ኣዲኻ ሳብረሚ ኮርዒዳ ትብላላ ትብላላ ኣዲኻ ሳብረሚ ኣንበሳ ትብላላ ኣዲኻ ሳብረሚ ኣንበሳ تبلالا أدي خاص برمي أمبس تبلالا أدي خاص برمي أمبس تبلالا أدي خاص برمي أمبس
Topic framing statement. Each candidate, when asked a question, will get a minute and 15 seconds or 90 seconds to reply. And there will be, during the audience portion where the questions will be coming in from the live feed, at that point, delegates or panelists can rebut or put their input for 45 seconds to reply to another person's point. So without further ado, I'm going to start up with the first framing statement. In the USA, we witness minority violence that result in unfair and unjust repercussions, from police killings to custodial death, torture, drastic over-policing that lead to assaults, in some cases death. Question one is directed to Futsum first. Do Eritreans turn away from minority violence in the American context and in the West? Futsum, please don't forget to undo your mic.
Mute myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. So I have how much to respond, brother? A minute, and I'm going to time myself so I don't go over my time.
Okay.
A minute.
I'm timing it as well, so I'll let you know.
Okay, you let me know. Okay. So the question is, are we impacted by it? Yes, we are impacted by it. So far as we're Black people from Africa, so definitely will improve our life, like the civil rights movement improved our life in America. At least I would have not been able to come here if it wasn't the civil rights movements of the 60s. And all that struggle that African Americans went through paved the way for me to live the comfortable life I live right now. But I'm always hesitant to equate my experience in America with African Americans. I feel like that would be selfish of me. I don't think the police or the establishment, when they see an African American driving and when they see me, I don't think the same picture comes to their brain. The 400 years of demonizing, African Americans, men being portrayed as rapists, criminals on TV and on TV shows and stuff. I don't think those things come to their mind when they see me. Of course, I don't think I'm as safe as a white person, but I don't feel comfortable equating my experience with African Americans. That would be selfish of me if I do that. That's how I feel. But definitely, every struggle they went through, all the advancement they made, I'm the beneficiary of it.
Thank you, Futsum.
Yeah.
Your input. Andom, same question. Do Eritreans turn away from minority violence in an American context and in the West?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what we mean by minority violence, but in the sense of how we deal and experience with white supremacy in this country, there are certainly similarities and differences. When we're looking at the similarities, as Futsum was speaking about, when someone looks at our skin color, they're looking at us phenotypically. We have melanin. Our skin color is black. So obviously, we unfortunately experience racism from people who just homogenize us and put us within this grouping of blackness, which we are part of. But certainly there's distinctions which are important to be made. We don't experience white supremacy in the same way that people who have been in this country for centuries have. Obviously, we don't have the centuries of systemic discrimination and institutionalized racism that we experience in the same way. So when you look at African immigrants, Eritrean immigrants in particular, we tend to start from a different standpoint that many African Americans themselves start from. But at the same time, we also experience incarceration in this country. We are experiencing poor schooling systems. And so because many of us live in Black neighborhoods, we are subject to a lot of that discrimination and institutionalized racism as well. Our community, however, we need to be able to interrogate our own biases. A lot of, particularly our parents' generation, or the generation that came straight from Eritrea, they have internalized globalized anti-Blackness themselves. And so even though we consider ourselves to be Black people, they might also experience and harbor those negative stereotypes that white people feel.
Thank you, Ando.
All right. So within our community, do we consider minority violence to be an issue? Do we as a community acknowledge these problems as our own? Are we Eritreans immune to the effects of violence towards people of color? Marta, take the microphone.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, okay. I think with us, all of us sharing the identity of being Eritrean, I think we come here with a level of concern for what our mission and motive is. I know a lot of people from Eritrea, they come here with the hopes of their kids going to school. You're done, the parents go back to home, and then you guys eventually, after you're done raising your kids, you go back there too. So there's some families that have plans to stay here long term, and there's some that just want their kids to get an education and go. So I've never seen, and since my time of being in Philadelphia, growing up there, I haven't seen extensive political activism per se, because again, as Eritreans, we're still trying to have a sovereign nation while still trying to somewhat heal, even though sometimes I feel like we kind of don't focus on the healing aspect as much, going back to back from the Italians to the Ethiopians. So I feel like we come here with our own politics that we kind of put on the forefront. But in actuality, I feel like we don't see the big picture to some degree, because we live the liberties that other people's grandparents have died for, and even then some, because of our phenotype and how we look. And we live this extra layer of privilege that we don't even necessarily acknowledge. Yes, we're all brown, but again, there's a spectrum of privilege. And I don't believe that we get treated the way that African Americans do here. And because I guess we come from more of a conservative culture, I think that kind of just makes us only prioritize what we find important as far as politics go. So I think we should be more active.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Marta. Vanessa, it's your turn to answer that question. You gotta unmute yourself, Vanessa. Yeah.
Sorry. I was just saying that I think in the US context, I'm not well placed to discuss that because it's not my own experiences. But I think that if I can speak about it in the Swedish or British or European context, I think that there's issues, again, just reiterating some of the previous points, that we share, and then there's experience that we don't share. And I think that the situation here is very different because we don't have, everyone who's Black pretty much are second or first generation immigrants, whereas in the US, you have the different aspect of African Americans and the second, first, third generation immigrants. So I think the situations are way too different to kind of, there's no other group to put us against here. And the issues that we face in terms of, like in education, at work, microaggressions on the street, stuff like that, we are the ones experiencing it here and in the UK, whereas in the US, there's different levels of groups. So I think the other people are better equipped to answer that question.
Nice. Okay. So, Shewit, it's your turn to ask the question.
Okay. To Sammy, as Eritreans, there are those in the community who do not identify themselves as Black, meaning they do not identify with the plight of African Americans. Not all, but some. This is not unique only to us, but to many other groups who, under white supremacy, are classified as Black. Where do you think this understanding of self comes from? What is the understanding and why?
Well, there's to address the layers on that in a short time. I don't know, but so the journey that I saw, let's just say that I saw our parents went through, is they just came from PTSD. They're the PTSD generation. They just arrived to America. I can just paint the picture real quick. What my mom saw when she came here, and she came knowing how Eritreans fight for the right to live back home, where she just came from in the early 80s, and how people fight over here for the right to live. She's like, oh, there's not war. This is a different battle. People are fighting here for rights, but you're not getting slaughtered by the numbers. It's just the different worlds. Our parents, when they came from a world of just run away before you die, and when they come here, it's not like that. So the fight for rights in their mind is more the right to live, rather than because what I'm saying is the fighting for civil rights, our parents did it differently than how African Americans do it, but that doesn't minimize the fight that African Americans go through. So, and on top of that, I'm just speaking on my parents. They came to New York City in the early 80s. This was during the height of when the urban communities are being flooded by a wave of crack cocaine. This is the war on drugs. This was like the HIV/AIDS epidemic was going crazy. This was a bad time for our parents to step foot into urban America, into Black America, and that time frame shaped and morphed their thinking and their perception of Black Americans. It wasn't the best time they saw Black Americans, and it was during when policies that were pushing people down was at its peak, in terms of redlining and just the war on drugs, Reagan era, everything. Okay. But basically, you're gonna just interrupt me? Fuck it.
You gotta keep a minute and a half, Sammy. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a tough question, but go ahead.
Thank you. Haptom, answer the question. You next.
Yeah, I was just gonna and I agree 100% with Sammy. There was different generations of Eritreans that came to America, right? You had the Eritreans that came in the late 60s and 70s, and usually they came through a scholarship through Haile Selassie, right? By way of Haile Selassie's relationship with America. So when they came in the 60s and 70s, they developed a strong relationship with the African American community, and you could see this with there was a lot of Eritrean Americans that were marrying African Americans, right? Like, for example, Nipsey Hussle's father. I have an uncle that married an African American lady that came in the 70s. So when the Eritrean refugees, right, I think it was January 1980 where the Refugee Act was passed, right, in America, you have a flood of Eritreans that are coming to, poor African American communities, and this is at the height of the crack epidemic, right? Mm-hmm. So, mind you, like, for example, my parents are from the village, right? So, their first impression of African Americans were, what was going on in poor African American communities, which was the crack epidemic, right? And so I feel like now it's starting to change, as far as the 80s and 90s. There was a blip in the 80s where, for example, there was a killing of an Ethiopian student in Portland, Oregon, named Mulugeta Sarau, and he was killed by skinheads. And in the late 80s, it was shockwaves throughout the Eritrean and Ethiopian community, and they were like, what's going on in America, right? And there are hate groups, right? And everybody was asking, like, who are the skinheads? Nobody knew who the skinheads were. So we are victims to the same oppression that African Americans face. We came, like Sammy said, we came to America at the worst possible time. We came to poor African American communities during the height of the crack epidemic, which was one of the worst periods in African American community. So I think, within the past 20 years, the perspective of Eritrean, our parents' generation has changed, and they're starting to learn.
Okay, Thank you, Hapton.
This same question to Mahate.
Yeah, I think well, first of all, thank you for hosting this debate, but I do think that again, like, just to reiterate what everybody said, that much as our parents who came here from like pull your own, get it done yourself kind of culture, and then coming here and just seeing the state of Black America, you can understand why they had the thoughts that they had about them, without like diving into like the history of like chattel slavery in the U.S. and how vicious and how oppressive it was, and then even when that was done, going through Reconstruction and the different ways they found, like the different ways that they subjugated Black people, without calling it slavery and putting a better face on it, you can understand the feelings that our parents had. But I think when it comes to us, we enjoy a lot of like the advantages and freedoms that we have here because of the Maswati that Black people paid before us. And so I get why our parents might not really identify with Black Americans. I can understand that. I don't 100% identify with Black Americans, but I do see the lineage between us. And I'm darker skinned too, and we also have this thing in our community, like, me and you, Shewit, like we're gonna get different treatment just on, based on how darker we are than others. And so I see if the cop pulls me over, he's not gonna ask where I'm from or what kind of Black I am, you know what I mean? So I think it's solidarity. We are Black people, and yeah, that's all I have to say really on that.
Facts, bro. Definitely. Yeah. I hear you, man. So next question is, what do you think is the first identity Eritreans identify with upon describing themselves? That question's for Fanan.
Okay. So I don't want to speak for all Eritreans, but I want to speak for those who are close to me, and I want to speak for Canadians. But from my understanding is that Eritrean people have this belief in their mind. We're different. They like to separate themselves even from West Africans. And if we unfold the layers, African Americans are 80, I'll be generous and say 80% are from Africa. They just identify themselves now as Black. So yeah, I would say this is a huge issue. And I have family, friends, people in our community. I experience racism still in Canada, at work, with cops. There's good cops and bad cops. The same thing with Eritrean people, Eritrean Canadians here. Guys are getting pulled over, whether you're light skinned, brown skin, and otherwise. So I think it's like this misconception, we need to break it. Our parents have been here for very long now, so it's time to educate and get past that, and that thinking that it has nothing to do with us when we're actually being directly affected on a global level. So that's all I have to say.
You make a good point, Fanan. I hear you. Fitsum, can you answer that question too as well?
How do we identify ourselves? The people I'm around with, and me myself, I identify myself with as Eritrean. It doesn't matter whether I was born in Ethiopia or on Mars. I'm Eritrean first. It doesn't matter. I have many identities. I'm a son, I'm a fiance, and I'm also African American. An African American who came from Africa. Like, I'm very hesitant. I don't want to include my experience with 400 years of oppression. So if I say I'm African American, I always mention I'm the one that came from Africa. Like, I didn't go to slavery. Like, I wasn't oppressed for 400 years. And the Eritreans, I know, we're all talking anecdotes. We don't have data that was studied, but from people I'm around, we consider ourselves Eritrean first.
Yeah, I understand. Good point, bro. Good point. So yeah.
If I still have time, can I correct a mistake that was made during the introduction? I taught in Eritrea for 1 year. I went there to do my service. The one teacher. That's what it was about.
So,
sorry.
You taught Nadi. Okay, that's good to know. Now we know. Thank you for correcting that. Okay, for Andom, question I have here for you. Can Eritreans be truly pro-Black to the core if implicit biases, endogamy, and purity politics, and stereotyping is deeply embedded in our socialization?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I think it's important to recognize that internalized racism and implicit bias is something that all of us deal with being socialized in this country and even throughout the globe, considering the way in which US media and US popular culture is propagated throughout the world. So I think that is something that is important to interrogate and dismantle within our own selves, regardless of where we are. But for those of us who are here in the West, I don't think one's politics negates their own racial or ethnic identity. But I think it's important to recognize that Blackness itself is something that's sprung as a political identity in response to white supremacy. Even the concept of Africa as a continent is itself in many ways rooted in opposition and response to slavery from the Arab world and from Europe. So I think all of these things are important to interrogate, but one's politics does not negate their own identity.
Good answer, bro. Love it. Now, Marta, could you answer that question too?
Martha, don't forget to unmute your microphone.
I don't even know if she's even on. Oh, we can always skip her.
Hi guys, can you see me?
Yeah, please unmute yourself whenever it's time to speak, everyone. All good. Yeah.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question one more time, please?
Okay, so can Eritreans be truly pro-Black to the core if implicit biases, purity politics, and stereotyping is deeply embedded in our socialization?
I do believe that we have the potential to be pro-Black if we're willing to tackle the issues that are literally in front of us concerning like what has, I guess, Western influence done to us on a religious level and even just a social level. I don't believe that we can sit here and claim the history and the experience of people that are actually, have been in America, whose family were, forced into slavery. I don't think our main motive should be to kind of identify with something that we can't possibly identify with, but rather that, listen, you're my extended brothers and sisters. We're family, for the love of God. Just because you're in a different continent doesn't mean that I don't have an obligation to still care for you. And I think when we unite on the identity level of just being Black and caring for one another, we have the potential to not only empathize with their struggles, but also help empower them and let them know, hey, we're here to support you and we are one. But again, until we see how much our culture to some degree has divided us, because I feel like we are more conservative, I feel like we won't be able to really dive into what it means to be pro-Black. If you're going to be Black in solidarity, and not just when it's kind of convenient. So I believe we do have potential to be completely pro-Black, but I do believe that we need to really sit and check the biases that exist and the propaganda that's been shoved down our throats since we came to America, along with our parents as well, because it is really deeply rooted and it's problematic.
Great. Love it.
All righty. Thank you so much, Martha. We're now going to be moving into framing statement number 2. At this point, you guys can rebuttal. Just shoot me a message or kind of wave and let me know if you guys have a counter view. So the framing statement is, similar to when the abolitionists said slavery could not be changed or reformed, but only abolished, many people feel that policing, prisons, and other institutions that have caused injustice for Black people and minorities cannot be reformed, but must be abolished. So question number 1 will go to Vanessa. Sorry, hold on 1 second. As Black people in your respective countries, can you question the existence of police, prisons, military, and other instruments of state violence? Question is to Vanessa. Don't forget to unmute.
Sorry. I think the discussion around this in the United States has been really interesting. I have not, and if there's any viewers watching this right now who disagree or have seen anything different, please send a message. But I have not seen like the same kind of conversations in Sweden, at least. I know there's a lot of discussions about prison abolitions as well in the UK. I think a big difference here from the US, again, I think I'm in a panel with predominantly Americans, US people, so you can also disagree with me, is that the amount of funding that goes to your military, to your prison system, and the entire kind of political system that has been built around the existence of these prisons and the value they have to certain people, certain corporations, look very different. Like our military is not very well funded. Our kind of prison system looks very different. So I think the context is really important and the history behind it. I definitely think there's reforms that are necessary in our system here. But I think that in the US, I think the statement is definitely more applicable, if that's a good answer.
Thank you, Vanessa. Same question to Sammy. As Black people in your respective countries, can you question the existence of police, prisons, military, and other instruments of state violence in the case?
Yeah. Well, I remember you mentioned about the is this connected to the other abolitionist question about reform and about so okay, like there's things that you can reform because like, or you can amend, like I think the Constitution is one spot, the American Constitution. We can just go after the 13th Amendment first, which there's that clause that says if you are a prisoner, so if you are in prison, you are still a slave. So maybe amending that 13th Amendment of the Constitution is probably, yeah, that's probably the first way to try. Abolishing an entire system, I mean, I don't know, but the state violence using militarization of police or military use alone, because yeah, I mean, it so happens to be the only thing that every time there's something involving Black unrest or civil protest involving Black people, that's when violence has to come into the picture, not when it's riots from you know sporting events that people win or lose, or people getting terminated from their coaching position because they were caught being, you know, a renowned pedophile. Things like that are not, you don't see the National Guard, you don't see SWAT team or riot gear police dealing with white rioters, but only Black civil protesting. So it seems like if you want to abolish the system because it's anti-Black in nature, then sure, but that takes a whole war. It just makes more sense to just reform many of the things and change leadership. I think voting, people really misunderstand voting, and some people doubt voting even works, but I yield my time.
Thank you, Sammy. Give me 1 second. Tech. Oh, sorry. The next question is going to be going to Hatom. Question is, in Eritrea, what channels or institutions are there to channel issues of the same or similar variance or matter? Is there if there isn't any institution or channel to address your qualms, why do you think that is, and should there be one?
Well, is there habeas corpus in Eritrea, right? You got to ask that question. If you're locked up in Eritrea, you know, especially when it comes to like addressing the political situation in Eritrea, are you given a day in court? And you're not, right? So there's not really there is, but it's not allowed, right? There's not really an avenue to address qualms in Eritrea, right? You know, there's no protest in Eritrea, right? Even though there's a need for protests, right? There's no protest in Eritrea because it's suicide, right? It's suicide to march down Harunet Avenue complaining against, you know, military police brutality, right, or complaining against political violence is suicide. You know, either you're going to disappear at night or you're going to get killed. You know, so there's not much. There's not a path to discuss. You know, issues. You know. Can you add? What was the rest of the question? Sorry. Your mic is off.
So
the rest of the question was if there is an institution or channel to address your qualms, why do you think that is, and should there be one? That was the second part of the question.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there definitely should be an avenue to address, you know, to ask questions, to ask for transparency, to ask for accountability, you know, and the reason there isn't one is because Eritrea is under tyranny. It's under a dictatorial rule right now. So, you know, under the current dictatorship that we have in Eritrea, can you actually address, you know, a lack of transparency, a lack of, you know, rule of law? You can't.
All right, guys. Listen up. If y'all want to like just chip in and you got something on your mind, you want to just let it be known, feel free to unmute yourself and just go ahead.
Yeah, we initially did the time because we're initially worried about people speaking out of turn, but I'll call on the people and just say what's on your mind without the time. I think that's better. For the next person to answer that same question, Mahate, what are your views on that question? You know, in Eritrea, what channels or institutions are there to channel the issues the same, similar, variance, or matter? And if there is an institution or channel to address your qualms, why do you think that is, and should there be one?
Yeah, I think it's obvious that there isn't. I won't like sugarcoat it. There isn't, and it's by design. The dictatorship that is there doesn't want anybody asking questions. There's no habeas corpus. There's no rule of law. Anybody can be arrested for thought crimes, or you know, because they have a family member in a position of leadership, and so there's no avenue to address your qualms, and there isn't because it's by design. The system was never meant for that. It was never supposed to be a democratic system where there's like a rule of law that people know. That's kind of like the thing that I think is the scariest thing about Eritrean society is that if there's a strict code of conduct and strict rule of law that people can abide by, at least you can navigate the system. But in Eritrea, all bets are off. Anybody can be arrested for anything, and you don't even have the right to inquire on behalf of your child or your parent who was arrested. I mean, just talk to the kids of Petro Solomon, any of these G15 people who were arrested, or not only the G15, but anybody who was arrested in that time frame when Isaias was really cracking down. You can't just go ask questions. Like that's the scariest thing about the system, and that's how they always meant for it to function. I think, at least. Yeah, I see my time. Anybody who wants to go can go, I guess.
Does anybody have any opposing views to this that would like to speak up?
Made a good point.
Fitzum was waving his hand, I guess.
Fitzum, feel free to unmute your mic.
Well, I only know Shewit, and I don't know the other guys here. I support the Eritrean government, YPFPJ member. So to answer your question, I want to start first from a bigger picture. Context matters. And I'll come to your question, okay? I just want to give a little bit of context, which is like, no Eritrean should miss this context, is what I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. The 98 war started, 3 years war. That small country was invaded 3 times and abandoned by everybody again, all right? It's the same thing that happened during the 30 years war, abandoned by everybody. And the implementation of no peace, no war by Ethiopia was to cripple Eritrea economically and politically and everything. So with this context in mind, the Eritrean government, the reason I support them is is their priority is national security. How do we protect this country from becoming like Somalia, or we being under Wayani? That's why I support them. That's their goal, and I support that. And to answer your question now, from that context, I called a friend of mine who are soldiers to ask if there's some abuse, how do you address it? And the answer I got when I was in Eritrea, teaching for a year, and the answer I got from my friends who are here who are soldiers and who've lived in Eritrea is very similar. In a way that it depends on who the leader is. You can have nekefeta if you are on the same level militarily, and it can be solved that way, is what they tell me. But if it's someone in a higher position, it depends on the person. It depends on the person. So yes, this is a problem that Eritrea has, and I know where it came from. And my priority is to have the country intact so that can be solved. Right? We have to have priorities. For me, the priority is how do I save the country, how I contribute, and then that would be a second, third, and maybe there may come a day where we can solve many things at one time. But if I'm running out of time, I want to say one thing. Let's not stretch things. Let's not exaggerate. Yes, I agree. There is no. If your leader is a bad person, you're screwed. But let's not exaggerate this. When I was in Eritrea, I've heard stories that happened, but for a whole year, not one person personally told me that have been abused. We hear stories. So someone needs to study it. How often does it happen? I feel like we should hold on from stretching truth, some truth, and then we just stretch it and say,
that's just
hold on.
Makete,
Yeah.
you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, yeah, of course, when you're inside Eritrea, nobody said something. That's the nature of the beast, right? There's certain things that just go unspoken, right? Like, for example, there's no law that says that I can't look a police officer in the eye, but if I'm getting pulled over, I won't look a cop in the eye because I know, like, I don't want him to even think that I'm challenging his authority, right? And so, yeah, of course, if you're inside of Eritrea, no one is going to say anything, but that's also like the nature of the society that they've created, right? And so there's a reason that there's no YPF-DJ inside of Eritrea, right? There's a reason that there's only YPF-DJ in the West. There's a reason that there are only people who are vocal about the injustices that they think that the Eritrean government is actually doing that's in the West, because there is no room for that. There's a vacuum inside of Eritrea, and there's no room for opposition. And yeah, I just think that whatever you said was invalid. Like, yeah, it must be nice to have these lofty ideas about security. What is the country? A country is the inhabitants inside it. If our people are willing to cross the Mediterranean Sea and like have their organs harvested in the Sinai Desert, what does that tell you about the state of affairs inside of the country?
Makati, so like, I want to ask, and I know Fitzum want to say something, but I just want to make a point. Like, I've heard someone say that our people, we tend to be passive. Do you think that is something that is true?
It's one of these things that, like, I mean, we need to speak for our culture when it comes to this too. Like, there's something about our culture, and a lot of African cultures, I especially see it with East African culture too, where our people respect power, they respect authority. There's like a like, even people who hate Islam will be like, well, he's Tabata, he's a man. And it's like, why is he a man? Because he's subjugating people. There's something in our culture that needs to be spoken for in terms of like this love for power or love for your abuser.
Okay.
I think that's
all right. Thank you for saying your point. Sammy, you want to say something?
Hold on. Yeah, we respect power, but I think our identity is rooted from fighting power oppressors. So I think that the notion that we're siding with our oppressor is like some type of Stockholm syndrome shit. Like, that doesn't rock with me. I don't agree with that. I think it's ridiculous.
Why?
We're complacent with saying that we're complacent I think it has more to do. I think, okay, let me just hone back in.
Go ahead. Take your time.
Anyone who, if someone is pro-government, let them be pro-government. If someone has if their idea is pro-government is for them to, the security and the sovereignty of Eritrea is dependent on the one that's running the show, then that's, you know, from what I've seen from my parents who have the same view, they are there's just a PTSD. It's written into that kind of programming, and you cannot blame them for that. Let them just feel like it's not. They're not really programmed, because there's people in Eritrea. When I was on Small, I spoke to more than 200 people. And there was plenty of people who had the objective views that said that they respect Isaias on the ground. These are people on the ground. They respect Isaias in terms of foreign affairs. They oppose him in terms of internal affairs. There's more than half the people I spoke to said that. And if people on the ground, if people there have these views, if they're not impartial, but they're, and sometimes, you know, there's those who will lean more left and those who will lean more right. It's not, you cannot debase or dehumanize your brothers and sisters for them wanting the security and the sovereignty to be protected of their homeland. Period.
Okay.
I'd like to jump in real quick if it's all right.
Go ahead.
You know,
one second, quick. Just want to make sure, Sammy, that you're done your point. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, just very, very briefly. You know, I think it's important to remember that culture is not static. Culture is dynamic. It changes, and in many effects, it's itself a response to the socioeconomic conditions on the ground. And here we're talking about culture being responsive to, in the case of Eritrea, political dictatorship. But if we connect it back to the initial question about policing itself being an institution of state violence and an institution of class rule and class control. And so whether we had Isaias in Eritrea or not, we still would have to have this conversation around what is the role of police and what is the role of military in our society. And here, you know, being in a relatively privileged position in New York, seeing what's happening here in the States and connecting it to what's happening in Eritrea, I think it's very clear that policing is in itself an agent and a vector of state-sanctioned violence. And so it's the reason why we see here disproportionate amount of police killings for people of color. It's the reason why you see police killings in Brazil and police killings in Europe. You see it everywhere. And so I think that from an abolitionist perspective, is important to understand that the material conditions on the ground, which make the idea for the need for policing and incarceration in the first place, is something that we need to get rid of. And the fact that we need and think that we need to have this military that has to protect us from all of these external forces which are going to invade us actually precludes the conversation around ensuring that they're creating systems of public care and public safety in Eritrea.
Okay, thank you.
Wow.
I have a question for Fanan, just to kind of give everybody equal chance to speak. Sammy raised a good point where, and I think there is a truth, because when we actually come down to talk, right, when it comes to geopolitics, right, like even myself, I agree with the Eritrean government, right? But when it comes to internal issues, like that, the way Sammy said that, I want to see change. You know what I'm saying? And so, for Fernand, do you recognize, you know, the internal and the exterior politics of Eritrea? Do you think, like, of course, we see the polar opposites, right? We see that there are people who are extremely against the government because they feel like internal politics matters. If we're not good in the inside, what does the external mean, right? And so a lot of people in the opposite see that. And for the people who are pro, though, from what I understand, they see the, like, we already fought how many years? 330-year war. On top of that, we had like 200 years of colonization for our land, and our identity is rooted in the land, you know, particularly, you know, amongst the Tigrinya-speaking people in Eritrea. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Our identity is rooted in the land. You know what I mean? And so naturally, because that's part of our indigenous way of thinking of things, right? We put the land before ourselves. So, you know, even like Tafano was saying it back in the day. He was like, "Oh, merete, basically, like my respect comes from owning my land." So, I find this is the honest truth. Do you recognize this as a divide, or like, is one triumph over the other? Is there a way for us to agree on both things and simultaneously like hit both targets? Does one have to be more important than the other? That's my question.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, first of all, my view for, I'm not even going to call him the president because that's just my view. He's an unhinged person, number one. Number two, there is no politics in Eritrea. It's not even allowed. You can't even have a conversation. I've been to Eritrea. I have seen my family members brutally treated by the cops there. They're military soldiers. They're not even considered police officers. I wouldn't consider them that. There is no politics in Eritrea. You can't even discuss against the government. In the United States here, we're free to discuss how we hate the prime minister, or economically, whether he's too liberal or they're too conservative. Nothing happens. In Eritrea, you can't do that. There's no politics. There's no politics. You can't even speak. When people speak to you and say everything is good, it's because they're scared. They don't want a war. They just want peace. These people want peace, and they are screaming for it. They want it. So for me, I think,
right.
Yeah,
I
that's
hear
just
you.
my
So,
yeah.
you know, I want to bring up a point, because I understand what you mean. I don't think there's any denying that Eritrea is not like a United States or Canada where you have freedom to talk about the prime minister or the president. But for argument's sake, do you feel that maybe like the fact that we're a 30-year country, we're a 30-year-old country, we're a third world country, you don't see freedom like you see in the West and many parts of Africa and Asia and even Latin America. Is that something to take in consideration when we talk about Eritrea or even countries like Ethiopia or Somalia, where where Eritrea may be a different situation in Ethiopia, but even then, you will see certain you won't have as much freedoms in many of these countries. So
Right.
what do you think about that?
We have leaders that want democracy. Right. We've seen what happened in 2001. The G15, it's not only 15 people who went to jail. It was 300 and plus people who went to jail. They wanted Siasa broken down. They wanted the constitutional rights implemented from 1997. We've seen how that went down.
Right.
Everything just shut down. So there is hope for our country. And people often think, there's nobody there. We have 300 plus people fleeing a day to Ethiopia, just to Ethiopia. Okay, we have 10,000 plus violations in Eritrea. In prisons, we have women being raped, men being sodomized. These are things that are not coming from Eritrean people. This is coming from the UN. No, you can smile if you want. It's coming from the UN. It's coming from the human rights activists. If you can publicly declare and say that this is false, I would love to hear it.
So Fernand, here's what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm a factual person, so I understand the facts and the things that go down. So, and you speak of democracy, and we know what went down before. But do you think that Eritrea is even like, and not just you, someone else answer this question because we gotta mix it up. Do you think Eritrea is even ready for democracy?
Unfortunately,
but we're gonna have to have other people answer too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Martha, go ahead.
Yeah. Well,
Go ahead.
Okay, so Fina, I was just gonna say, when it comes to Eritrean politics, so I'm 27 and I'm almost as old as the country, right? I think democracy should be welcomed by everyone. I think the problem is, again, it's like democracy at the cost of what? Because like I said, as far as like relations, as far as like the borders and stuff, I mean, whether it be conflict with conflict with Ethiopia, there's always been some type of something going on where we need to pretty much protect the land. And granted, that's a great thing because, again, like the other brother said, our identity is really rooted in them. For most, we didn't fight the Italians and also the Ethiopians for no reason. So we feel like, again, a lot of people want this democracy to happen. However, it's like, when this democracy process takes place, will this give room to the others who are A, trying to cause conflict, or B, trying to take our country all together? And it's just like I said, I'm in the pursuit of, supporting anything that brings enrichment to the people as far as happiness goes. I think we should care about our land, but also the land really doesn't matter if we don't have the people there to, again, be there, but also happily be there. And like I said, I'm a complete neutral person. Like I said, I've been on both spectrums. But again, my main reason for even being in this part of this whole conversation is to be a voice to say that I care about the Eritrean people. And like I said, again, it's not that people are not for democracy. It's like there's other things going on that I think sometimes make people feel very uneasy with the idea of losing our land if you give a democracy some room of something to even entertain itself. And like I said, I don't think that's considered like right in any way. But again, I'm trying to say where I understand both sides. And at the end of the day, a lot of our identity is within the land. But with that being said, so is that our happiness. And I feel like we kind of forgot about our happiness aspect while trying to kind of protect our country. Both things matter.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna have to cut you off. I want to ask. Can someone jump in? I want to ask a question here. Okay, sure. Go ahead.
One second. So what I'm gonna do now is, because it's kind of getting hot, I'm gonna limit it to like 50-second speaking time to rebut. And so I got a request from Vanessa to respond, and then after that we'll move on to the questions because we don't want to get caught up. We want to keep going with the plan. Okay. So Vanessa, you can go ahead.
Cool, 50 seconds. So I think, first of all, there's an importance in distinguishing between what the government says that they do and what they actually do. I think when speaking about, like, I think Shewit said that he supports them when it comes to global politics, and someone else made the distinction between their foreign policy and their internal politics. But I think that the idea of self-reliance that's been going on and that's been spoken about for a very long time is, as most of us know at this point, is false. Eritrea has been taking loads of aid money from the EU, from other institutions, letting foreign companies come to Eritrea and kind of do whatever they want for a very long time. So I think speaking about it as if they have an idea of, there's an echo, sorry. But speaking about it like as an idea, as they have some kind of sense when it comes to one thing, but just happens to not have it when it comes to the other, it's false. Unless you want to dispute, reports coming out from the EU about hundreds of millions of euros that is being given to the Eritrean regime, for the past since 2015. And I think the second part is it sounds like a very white and derogatory way of speaking about the Eritrean people, saying that they're not ready for democracy. I think there's a difference between saying that maybe building institutions take time, building democratic traditions take time. I think there's value in discussing that and even discussing what kind of system that we want to have. But I think that's saying that, Eritreans are not ready for democracy, so let's imprison the people who are asking for it. Let's put them, in jail for X amount of years just because the people are not ready in protecting the people. I don't think, and this is my personal opinion, that democracy takes 30 years to build. I think it's an active choice not to do it.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Contribution. Tech, let's continue on with the rest of the questions.
Okay, all right. Yeah. I had one I want to throw in, but
okay. Right. Sammy wants to reply, so
hold on.
50 seconds.
I feel like not everyone speaks about Eritrea, and it blows my mind when they speak so like they know matter of fact the way the system of Eritrea. They think that everything is the office of the president, and I like there's nothing else but the office of the president. They don't talk. No one talks about the regional setup, the regional structure of democracy. There is smaller forms, local democracy in elections. No one talks about that. I mean, it's been a while, but still, it's happened. They don't talk about the unions who leveraged all the power in Eritrea. The unions. There's how many of them? I think 10, 12. I'm not exactly sure, but like, and the biggest union amongst them all is the Eritrean Women's Union. They have half the country and a lot of guns. People keep forgetting about that. how much unions sway the political sphere, and it's just, I think people need to do a little more research on the pendulums and mechanics of the Eritrean government and the Eritrean system itself, from in the north and in the south.
Hey, Sammy,
but I yield my time.
Thank you very much, Sammy, for cooperating. Mahete wanted to have, this will be the last rebuttal. Mahete, before we move on to the next one, you got 50 seconds.
Yeah, because I do agree with what you said, Sammy, in terms of it's not only SAS, but one thing that we found out after the revolution was that there was a secret party that we didn't know of, right? And so even then there was like a cadre of people who were running things behind the scenes. So when you say that, yeah, that there's more people to be held accountable, but the leadership has always been top down. And right now, from what we know, maybe there is a secret party that we don't know of, but everything is top down. I mean, you can read accounts of the previous, not even previous, but other unions of women, leaders who were arrested because they decided to buck and they didn't want to be part of the National Union of Eritrean Women. So I get what you're saying in terms of it's not only SAS. Of course, SAS is not the only problem. It's not that if SAS dies or if SAS goes that Eritrea's problems are solved. This is a whole problem with the system. That's what I just want to say.
Okay, I got one last thing I'm just gonna say. We're gonna get to the questions, but I just want to ask, do you feel when we're talking about the Black Lives Matter, do you feel that like obviously these are our experiences, this is what we're dealing with in our countries, we deal with the police over here, but do you feel like we're kind of like out of touch with we say we're Eritrean, but we don't live in Eritrea, right? So do you think we're out of touch with kind of what's really going on in Eritrea because we do not actually live there? Do you think a large portion of the people are out of touch?
Hold on one second, Maheta, just to make it fair. Can we direct that question to Futsum and keep going with the...
Okay, sure.
Yeah, we'll just do it like that. Everybody will get a chance to speak.
Futsum, do you think you're going to have to unmute yourself, please? Do you think the people here are out of touch with what's going on? Even if you grew up there for like 15 years or whatever, you still moved over here and adjusted and changed your life. Do you think the Eritreans become out of touch?
I'm sorry, brother. As one of the two government supporters here, I think I need to respond. We're outnumbered in this chat room, not outside.
But you're in good hands, bro. You're good, bro.
So can I respond, or am I breaking the law?
No. We're all Eritrean. We're all like,
Eritrean, let's have an open discussion.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
I'm not the decider who's Eritrean or not, but can I respond to certain points before I answer that question, or maybe you can give that question to someone else?
Okay, how about this?
No.
I'll give you like 2 minutes just to touch on everything, and then answer the question. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Just because we're silent for the time. I'm trying to make this as fair as possible, so just shoot me a minute, and I'll try to get everybody a chance to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, Shewit. Since it's only me and Samuel, Samuel seems like on my side. I don't know what's her name, the one, the person who was in Canada. She said no one is inside the country. I mean, don't talk to people about people that way. Everybody has a gun in Eritrea. If we didn't like the government, we'll get rid of it. Okay. Let's not talk down to people. The people understand there is a problem. They can balance it, okay? They know what's inside problem. They have what they have outside problem, and they're working through that. To say no one is inside the country to solve the problem, I don't know, it makes me uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. And I want to say one thing, and then we'll move on. Like usually when I encounter people who are opposition to the government, I don't know, it feels like to me like democracy is as an end. No, every system is a tool for me. Just because the government in Eritrea is dictatorship, then therefore it's bad? No, every system is a tool. The end is the people. The end is the people. If dictatorship is what's going to save the country, then that's what we're going to have. And it has worked, okay, guys? Let's not be blind what's going on outside. Wayane is Mekelle right now. They're not in Addis Ababa, okay? like the threat we have, the threat is still there, but it's not there as it used to be. Okay, they cannot abuse us anymore. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's because we're in the West. The West is always talking about democracy, as if it's the end. No, the people and the country is the end. It's not the system. I don't care about the system. Which system is going to solve the problem is the question. And today, in 2020, Wayani is not a threat as it used to be. Okay, they tried taking Assad. Like, let's not forget what happened since '98. They tried taking Assad. They tried installing someone who would work for them. Is that the country you want?
Thank you. Yeah, I understand. There's still Wayanas.
That's not the country we want.
Politics going on. So I think
you cannot ignore the reality.
Okay. No, you're right. You're right. Thank you.
Can I add something?
Appreciate you.
Hold on. We're just gonna move on with that.
Let's just moving on from that.
It gets too hot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's move on with that. We're gonna continue with the questions, but I appreciate everybody being as civil as possible, even though everybody's very passionate.
Yes.
Like, kudos to all of you guys. Like, straight up, I really appreciate you guys. So let's continue on with the topic at hand.
You guys are doing amazing.
Yeah, you guys are doing great. Because let's see, I never thought I'd see this in a day of my lifetime, to be honest. So
yeah.
The next question will be
We are in the moment. That one.
The question is, as Eritreans,
okay, go ahead.
What do you think we can do to show our solidarity with our Black Lives Matter movement?
Can I, sir, is it open to everyone?
Oh no, I'm gonna keep going with just to kind of cool things down for a second. So, yeah. Martha, you can be next, but this question's direct. Okay. Andom, you still around? You gotta unmute yourself just in case.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize it was me.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question? One more time? It's all good.
Yeah. With these questions, when it comes to Eritrea, we'll put a time limit. When it comes to general stuff, because we can be a little more civil, I'll let people finish their trains of thought. So for this one, just to get your train of thought out, just be mindful of other people want to speak. As Eritreans, what do you think we can do to show our solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I mean, we are Black, so I mean,
True.
It's
no, but like say for example, like our folks understanding being more active, like, because a lot of times we're just shelled off to ourselves. Like, we're like young people, we're active, but like to get even like as Bahabara, like the entire picture of Eritreans here or in the Western context, not only just in America, Canada. What do you think? How can we collectively be a part of Black liberation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to echo what Hopton was talking about before in terms of Eritreans' entry point into seeing white supremacy from and understanding it in the Western context is really important. My family came here in around 1970, and so there were many Eritreans who were working in solidarity with Black Americans, with Palestinians, with other Africans around different liberation movements in the country. So I really think it just depends on when people came here and how we can actually think about frames to extend our understanding of what Black liberation looks like and what the reality is for Black Americans in this country. Many of our parents don't really understand that. For many people, the points of differentiation are totally different if you grew up in Eritrea than if you grew up here, where, Du Bois spoke about the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. In Eritrea, everyone's Black, right? So there are going to be different points of differentiation, ethno-linguistic groups, religion. So I think it's really just about, and if we're talking about our parents' generation, educating them on what the realities are. And as I mentioned before, really just targeting anti-Blackness and internalized racism.
Perfect, bro.
I know Martha wanted to touch on this topic. Martha, as Eritreans, what do you think we can do to show our solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement? And this is a holistic question, not just only centered around us who may have a different understanding.
I think that the best thing that we could do is show up in one way or another, either show up on the front lines of the street, protesting in person, or fund the movement altogether. Or you can always try on a systemic level if you are in a position of power, whether it be in a corporate environment or another systemic way. I think it's important to be engaged in one of the three. I don't think it's, I mean, you're entitled to, but I don't think it's okay just kind of be completely inactive, at least seek to understand what the movement is about. But again, understanding that this movement will inadvertently affect you in positive ways, not only you, but any of your children and descendants that decide to come to America as well. So yeah, I believe show up in a way that you feel is comfortable for yourself. Don't feel so inclined to just want to show up to the street. Show up in some way. That's what I think.
Awesome.
Nice.
Just to
Go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Next question.
So before the next question, once again, before you're ready to buy or sell residential or commercial real estate anywhere in the U.S., call Mr. Jonas Weldu to grow your estate. Please visit www.weldurealestate.com or call 702-750-5450 for more information.
Okay.
Just gotta throw that in there. Let me see. Next on the list for this question, Vanessa. Vanessa,
question 4.
The question is once again. Oh no, for number 4.
Okay.
You want to read it out, or I read it out?
Yeah, I'll read it out, bro. Keep it. Yeah. So we are in a moment in this country where the people are challenging the status quo. In the same way, Black Lives Matter has used various methods like rioting and group economics. Both are active, but same methods are confrontational and have achieved the attention needed for their movement to gain legitimacy. In the Eritrean context, do you recognize the methods of Eritrean justice seekers as legitimate? Why or why not? Vanessa?
I'm assuming you mean the current ones, as in like the ones in the diaspora, or?
Yeah, the ones in the diaspora.
The ones in the diaspora. Even if there's multiple ones that maybe you might consider one legitimate, another one not legitimate, you can touch that. Do you consider Eritrean justice seeker movements legitimate the same way we see Black Lives Matter movements legitimate in all forms? Some of them are passive, or some of them are both active. You get what I'm saying? The notion? Yeah.
No, I wasn't sure if you're referring to movements using violence. That's what I was like just wanted to clarify. I definitely think any movement rooted in a genuine desire for like a better life, a better society for yourself and for your friends and siblings and children are legitimate in that sense. And I think there can be problems with certain movements, but I definitely think that the Eritrean justice seekers in the diaspora generally are legitimate. I think we presented as kind of we are not one group, but we kind of work together. We presented very legitimate arguments. I've yet to hear one argument that has made me think twice about my position. And this debate has not changed that in any way. And for that reason, I don't see it as a non-legitimate movement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
I want to
Samuel.
Go ahead.
You're not going to do 2 for that?
I want to do Samuel for the same thing. I was on the same point as you. Yeah.
Well, can you say the question again? I'm sorry.
The question is, we are in a moment in this country where people are challenging the status quo. In the same way, Black Lives Matter has used various methods like rioting and group economics, both active, but some methods are confrontational and have achieved attention needed for their movement to gain legitimacy. In the Eritrean context, do you recognize the methods of Eritrean justice seekers as legitimate? Why or why not?
Eritrean justice seekers as a
so there's different parts.
No, what was it? Hold on, let me put on.
Okay, in the Eritrean context, do you recognize the methods of Eritrean justice seekers as legitimate? Why or why not?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you say justice seekers, you mean like humanitarian, like human rights lawyers? What do you mean? Listen. I 100% appreciate the Yaakil folks and Vanessa and everything, because they're fighting the good fight that the other people don't have the luxury to, because they're bounded by family here and family there, let's just say, so there's just people who aren't in the diaspora able to do that type of thing, and I commend, I do honestly do, but I think that there's degrees to which you should go about in not shaming those who cannot speak because they're bounded by family here and family back home. I think that you're forcing okay, the fight here. Okay, now let me pivot. The fight here for Black Lives Matter. This is a fight we can do here. We're not. We're not back home, and if we were, we would. I personally think that. Never mind. I'll pivot back. This is, I just can't say everything I want to. Listen, it's a tough question. So let me come back to it.
Okay. Is there anybody else on the panel that wants to answer this question? Just shoot me a message real quick, and then
talk show.
You're the only one who said something, so yeah. And then we're gonna move on to the next framing topic.
I did see Futsum raise his hand too, but I just want to say though.
So we'll do Mokate first, then Futsum, and then we'll close the topic.
Because I do agree with Samuel's point that the irony isn't lost on me that I'm living a comfortable life here in the West and commenting on the political situation in Eritrea. I do understand it, but I also am like, a lot of my politics is motivated by my guilt when I see people, because before it was always people older than me, now it's people my age, people younger who are drowning trying to get here, willing to go through all types of hell to have a better future for themselves. So the irony isn't lost on me that, yeah, I'm here and I'm commentating on the politics for a country that to be honest with you, I'll never live there. Maybe I'll go back and visit, not right now, but maybe I'll go back and visit. But I do think that there's something to be said for having like principled stance and for what I think is right, using the freedoms that I'm afforded in in the Western country that I do live in to go ahead and say what I have to say. And I don't even want to judge other political organizations who I might not agree with their politics or even the optics of their politics. I know there's something in me that it doesn't feel right when I see opposition groups going to meet with the Ethiopian government. There's something just inherently that doesn't sit right with me. But I will say though that we know that TPLF and EPLF collaborated to push Jebha out of the battlefild. So that's also part of our history and our politics that we need to contend with. But I just want to say that I agree with Samuel's point in general. It's easy to judge.
Thank you, Mukhate. And final speaking point, Futsal.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter where we go as Eritreans. We can't escape it because of the price that has been paid. It's the guilt that brought us here, and everything we do that concerns Eritrea. We feel guilty because we haven't suffered. To answer your question, the justice seeker, do we see them as a legitimate? From my own point of view, as long as they don't come in conflict with the national interest of Eritrea, I'm all for them. I raise hell in meetings. We probably have a lot of in common. You should see me when I'm having meetings within YPFDJ. But if they make me choose between the national interest of Eritrea and their specific cause, then I'm forced to choose Eritrean national interest. Some things we just have to agree to disagree. What are we going to do? Every single time, if I'm asked to choose, I always choose Eritrean national interest. The way I understand it.
I appreciate that. We're going to be moving on to the topic of number 3 topic framing statement. Hopefully, if you guys need a chance, you guys can open it up and read it again, but I'm going to read it out for you guys. Significant disagreements among the Black Panther Party leaders over how to confront ideological differences led to the split within the party. Certain members felt the Black Panthers should participate in local government and social services, while others encouraged constant conflict with the police or authority. For some of the BP party supporters, the separation among political action, criminal activity, social service, access to power, grassroots identity became confusing and contradictory as Panther's political momentum was bogged down substantially. These and other disagreements led to a split. Some BP members like Huey P. and David Hillard emphasized on participation within the system, creating community self-defense classes, etc. Others, like Eldridge Cleaver, preferred and practiced confrontational tactics and methods. The divide was between reformists and revolutionary agendas, and the tactics which ultimately led to the demise of the Black Panther Party. This ultimate split made them and their organization vulnerable and played to the hands of the U.S. government. So the first question is, and we're going to go in the proper order. So the next person will be, I will do it Haptom. The first question, in the Eritrean context, some would say this seems to be the similar divide and nuances within Eritrean politics. Would you agree? Why or why not?
So let me get back to the Black Panthers, right? Eldridge Cleaver called for the I'm getting an echo. Eldridge Cleaver called for the he openly called for the overthrow of the U.S. government, and he did this mainly out of Algeria, right? Because he was stationed in Algeria. Whereas Bobby Seale believes in change, right? Actually participating.
1 second. Okay, go ahead. Never mind.
Yeah, so actually participating in local government, right? He ran for mayor of Oakland. So they definitely had two different beliefs and agendas. And so to relate it to the Eritrean context, yeah, there's people that say, let's kill Isaias Afwerki, right? And usually violent overthrows result in another dictatorship, right? So it's just like, so in my opinion is the rule of law is the rule of law, right? Is the current rule in Eritrea constitutional or unconstitutional? And it's unconstitutional. In my opinion, it's unconstitutional. I think the current president should be brought in front of court, right? He should be able to defend himself. And so you got to watch out for extremists. In the case of the Black Panthers, right? You had the COINTELPRO, right? Counterintelligence program by the FBI, and they basically they basically destroyed the Black Panthers. They basically destroyed the Black Panthers. They infiltrated the Black Panthers. Fred Hampton, for example, his bodyguard was an FBI agent. He basically gave him the layout of Fred Hampton's house when the Chicago police came and killed him. And so you have to watch out for people like this in any organization. You have to have democracy, right? You got to have some type of democracy. You got to have some types of restrictions in the people that you do allow with regard to a political party, right? And you got to watch out for extremists. And there's extremists in both sides, right? And right now you see like some of these extremists, like these Agazian extremists. A lot of people that believe in like just ethnic states. And you got to be vigilant of them, right? And you got to speak up on them. You got to say like, listen, you're wrong. So there's a lot of relationships to there's a lot of comparison to what happened with the Black Panthers and what's currently happening towards Eritreans right now.
Perfect, bro. Okay.
Thank you, Haptom. Next on the list was actually Makate.
Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question for me, Shewit? Sorry.
So basically with the whole context of Black Panthers, the question is, in the Eritrean context, would you say this seems to be the similar divide and nuances within Eritrean politics? Would you agree? Why or why not?
Yeah, I do agree with it in a general context. I was happy to hear Fitzum say earlier that as long as we can agree on like Eritrea's right to be a sovereign nation, to be independent, that he's okay with any conversations around that. But I mean, there's a reason that these groups who oppose the government haven't really been able to do anything of significance, and it's because they're divided. There's a reason, I think, also that ELF was, that was more established, that was so easily pushed out of like the battlefield and like out of like the political arena and say that's that. And I think it's because of internal division. So I do think that there's something to be said about a lot of these groups not being able to get over themselves to defeat what is the larger enemy in their mind. And also, I mean, there's a lot of intrigue and international interest in Eritrea just because of where we are in terms of global trade. Like having that Red Sea coastline. So we're going to have that angle too of infiltrators and people who are trying to sow division amongst us. But things like this give me hope in terms of being able to come here, people who don't agree, even people who are on the same side on having different ideas for what the future of Eritrea should look like. This gives me hope, but the internal divisions, some of them are definitely natural, some of them are definitely contrived, but yeah.
Thank you. Fanan, sorry, I have a question for you. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and do that. So how can Eritreans learn from the mistakes of other Black organizations like the Black Panthers?
Oh my God, that runs deep. Okay, I want to answer that to the best of my ability. I think first off, at the stage that we're in as Eritreans, we have, God, it's for me, I find it's not going to be an easy ride. We have a lot of Eritreans who are facing trauma mentally, emotionally, from their experience and their journey coming to Canada, America. We have our generation too, but I think is identifying these things and understanding that in order to rebuild, we need to heal. So if we can't get past understanding and listening to one another despite our differences and saying like, we hear you, but we can't, put a blind eye and close the curtain and avoid the fact that we have like a horrible virus amongst the generations that are fleeing from Eritrea. We have issues here as well as firstborn generations. Not that we're completely perfect, but I think it's identifying that, the culture differentiation, and just, I think, coming to terms and talking to each other like we're doing right now, talking and putting our differences aside, and how can we move forward? I guess that's my conclusion. I don't know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Fitsum, you right there. I'm gonna ask you if you can unmute yourself. How can Eritreans learn from the mistakes of other Black organizations like the Black Panthers?
You can always learn from other people's experience, organizations. It's the history is a little bit different. The Black Panthers were surrounded by the American, federal government is too powerful, and then they're within it. So they had a really tough battle. But from the point of view of, being able to work together, so you're not divided, and if you're divided, you become weaker. From that point of view, definitely, what we have to learn is the more divided we are, the better it is for our enemies, and we're all going to lose, right? Like those of us who support the government, it's like sometimes you're like a broken record. We keep saying the same thing again and again. It's because I think it's very important. When they implemented the No Peace, No War from 2001 on, is to divide us. Hardship and shortage of things makes you fight among yourself. And there has been a lot of cracks. You can talk to any Eritrean, things always get worse and worse and worse, right? 98 things were better, 2001 was worse than 98, 2005 was worse than 2001. It's because of shortage. And this is what our enemies did purposely, to divide us. And we have to know what our enemies are doing. And there will be disagreement and stuff, but always on the back of our, somewhere there, we have to know. If we don't talk to each other, and if we're divided, then we're all going to lose. Because at the end of the day, your interest and my interest is Eritrea. That's why we're here. So, and the Black Panthers are not here anymore. They had good ideas. They were, providing foods for their own community. They were looking after the children. So maybe if they were still around, there would not be a lot of African Americans in jail. So I mean, everybody knows, but I think we have to remind ourselves. We're divided, then we're gonna regret it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fatou. Go ahead, Tech.
Okay, so Andom, you there?
Yep.
Okay, so everyone mute themselves. So in the Eritrean scenario, it is safe to say that we do not 100% have the exact same views. Despite our similarities, we are divided in our differences. What would it look like to have Eritreans come together to have a collective, inclusive solution in regards to the future of our nation?
Yeah, well, I mean, something just like this is a great first step. It seems like we don't have that many people from all sides. So I wonder what the reason for that is. If people who initially had signed up but backed out, you got to put in the work, and we have to be able to engage with each other. Obviously myself, my political stance on this issue is I've articulated it already. So I think that we need to make sure that we have people who consider themselves to be pro the current Eritrean government stepping up to the plate and be willing to have these conversations. But part of the reason why they frequently shy from having these conversations is because their privilege exudes from themselves when they're articulating a politics which they are able to do from the West that they wouldn't be able to do in Eritrea.
Okay, thank you. And Marta, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I'll ask you the question again. In the Eritrean scenario, it is safe to say we do not 100% have the exact same views. Despite our similarities, we are divided in our differences. What would it look like to have Eritreans come together to have a collective, inclusive solution in regards to the future of our nation?
I think what it would take is for everybody, depending on, again, the different sets of groups that exist within the Eritrean community, to really just choose a top 2 or top 3 priorities that they really want to prioritize, and bring all of the top 3s or top 2s from different sectors of, different groups within the community, and really focus in, because like I said, a lot of people want the best for Eritrea, for the land, for the people. But when it comes to different ideologies, it's like, can we see the similarities and find common ground with where there is agreement amongst many different groups of people who may not agree completely, but I'm sure there are some correlations. And I think sometimes we focus on the differences and not the similarities that do exist. Because I don't think anybody on this call, or I don't think most Eritreans wish anything horrible on their country or even the people. But again, I think we're focusing on the how we're leading instead of where do we find a correlation amongst all group, and coming to the table together to make sure that those things are executed, and then moving on to other priorities that exist within, the different groups of people and their thoughts on how the leadership should be led in our country.
Good answer. Really good answer. I really like that. Shewit, is there anything you want to say, add on to that?
Hold on, you're gonna skip me on 2 questions.
Okay.
Hold on. First off, what the Black Panthers didn't have, and what Black organizations or Black activists don't have now that we didn't have before, was counterintelligence. As he mentioned, Fred Hampton had, his bodyguard was a narc, or was a FBI informant. So there's other moments of that too. There's other instances of that, and we already know Eritreans, we can be as bigger snitches to the government. Like they could play both sides easily and just be the biggest snitches. So it's a deadly game. But and then what I wanted to say, Andom, you should have dropped the mic after you said that. And then I think that there's a political identity entanglement that we have. So what happens to us outside the political dynamics in the country affects our behavior, or affects our mindset, or affects us, period, collectively outside the country, because we're always tied back somehow, some way. So if there's peril, hopelessness, and conflict back home, how are we going to feel like over here with each other, with our neighbors, with people amongst the culture? It's just, there's an entangle. It's just all reactionary, and it's part of a web of things. And yeah, and solidarity amongst the intergenerational and solidarity should happen. We should all be on the same page, at least, that we want better for back home, whether on the things that are falling in between in the Venn diagram, all things in between and in the middle, we should all focus on with it as an intergenerational battle. Yeah.
Did anyone have anything else they want to add to that? Fitsum, go ahead. Didn't you already answer that? Okay.
I'm sorry, guys. I feel like I'm talking too much.
No.
Okay?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just want to respond to two things that were said earlier. One is, why don't opposition seems to have, why don't they succeed? And I think, I was just reading the chat, sorry. I think the reason is the opposition does not have a support base. I mean, if it did, it would get somewhere. And I think that has to do with the platform of the opposition. The people at the end of the day, I think they know what the bigger, they have like, what's the word? Priorities. They have prioritized it. I hear opposition speak, and it's one of the problems, but I have to prioritize. I think that's why the reason oppositions don't go far. And the second thing I want to say is for Andom, since I'm the only, I don't know, I'm part of the government, I'm YPFDJ, he said something that kind of touched me a little bit. He said the privilege of pro-governments, why don't they come and participate in this kind of things? I don't know why they don't come and participate. I don't know who you talk to. But one thing I want to make sure is there is no privilege being pro-government. This is so kills your time, it kills your money. Personally, you're affected. There is no privilege, Andom. It's just sacrifice. I don't know what kind of privilege you're talking about, but there is no privilege whatsoever from my personal experience and the people that I'm around with. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, interesting point about privilege. I think that's a whole nother discussion in itself when we're talking about privilege and perks of whether you support or you don't support. It depends how you define privilege, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying, Fitsum? It really depends. Everyone has a different situation, so I can't.
Yeah. I know we'll go out of topic if we do that.
Yeah,
sorry.
That differentiates with each.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Sorry.
It's okay, brother. Is there? Sure, you have anything you want to say?
I do want to take questions from the audience because I want to feel like they're a part of this discussion, because largely it's been the plan and we've been doing the stuff that we planned. But I want to start off with the first question.
Well, I think Vanessa had a question. Shewit, my fault.
Did she? Sorry,
yeah, she commented in chat.
Oh, sure, Vanessa, go ahead. She had a comment.
Yeah, no, you asked before when someone was speaking, so I was like, hey, you can answer as well. So no, I just wanted to make a point, answer the question that you just asked about kind of coming together, because now we're divided and like we should come together for the common purpose. And I think the language that Fitsum uses, with all due respect, is very simplistic and sounds very much like George Bush, kind of like us against them, like the enemy, we focus on the enemy. I think a country or a people can have several enemies. I think that the Ethiopian government throughout history has been an enemy towards the Eritrean people. And I think at this time, Eritrean government as well, together with the Ethiopian government, have been enemies against our people and the people living there. And I think, as Martha was saying, like the focus should be the land and the people's happiness. And I think when you say kind of happiness, it's not just in relationship to relative happiness, but just, when it comes to protecting land, when it comes to protecting any kind of national interest, most countries have constitutions, most countries have laws. And when it comes to making those kind of decisions, it's usually a balancing game, right? So if the country is coming at you with, tanks trying to destroy your country, you might maybe pause the legal system or whatever for a certain period of time. And if that would have been the case in Eritrea, I might have had a different approach to the whole situation. But everything you're speaking about, Husam, is coming from your perspective. We've never received like an official statement of a state of emergency. We never received an official kind of statement about the length of this period. And you still speak about this enemy in the same way as they did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when in fact your president is, celebrating peace, celebrating brotherhood with Dr. Abiy Ahmed, who has been celebrating, the end of this. He said we didn't even lose anything from this. So I don't understand how you or anyone who kind of sympathizes with your opinions can speak about this common enemy continuously till this day as a justification for anything that has happened, when the very person who's in charge of our country has said that this whole situation is over, that there's peace now. And just to add on the second part of that, you said that, you have never heard about abuse when you went there. You're not saying it doesn't occur, but you just haven't heard about it yourself. And I think that resonates a lot with white Americans saying, oh, I had no idea the situation in the US for Black people was that bad, until I literally had to watch a video of a Black person being, killed because the policeman's, foot or whatever was on his throat. I think it's, again, and I think that speaks again to the privilege potentially, but also maybe to the blind support when you have to see something that kind of graphic, so you just understand the level of abuse. No one I've ever met in Sweden has ever told me I've been raped, but I still believe the statistics. I still believe the stories I read about. I still support and read the stories that come out in newspapers or in books or whatever. And I think it's disappointing that it's going to require so much more for you to understand that people are suffering. And it's disappointing to see that you continue to kind of believe an excuse that's been used for almost 19 years that has been absolutely disproportionate to the effects that it's had. Yes, there is definitely conflicts between Ethiopia and Eritrea, throughout history. But to what end does the ends and the means just become one and not, for the people anymore?
Thank you, Vanessa.
Can I answer since it's directed toward me, or?
Sure.
Or...
Totally fine. And then we'll go on with the next question. So
Can
go
I
ahead.
say one thing after him, just about the privilege part that someone was saying? Something very short.
Okay, so we'll do this. Utsum first.
Okay, go ahead.
Then Martha, and then we'll go on to the next question. All righty.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are enemies. I don't think a lot of people don't see that. I mean, they exist. They invaded in '98. The war took 3 years, bloody war. I don't know. Does anyone disagree with that? I don't think so. Are we aware of the no peace, no war implemented by Wayane? Everybody, are we on the same page there?
Yeah, of course. There's a.
Yeah.
I acknowledge it, definitely.
Yeah. All right. So those are the enemies I'm talking about, right? So from 2001 until Wayane was kicked out of Addis Ababa, we have big enemy. I mean, I cannot ignore it. It's impossible to ignore because it's there. Sanction, border assaults, politically they isolated us. These are the kind of things we cannot ignore. You can ask me to ignore it, but I'm sorry. I see it, I read about it, I experience it, so I cannot ignore it. Sorry. And the second thing is, you said like a white person who does not understand. I don't know. My parents migrated to Eritrea because of the war. I migrated because of the war. I don't claim to have experienced things. Those who are living in Eritrea, I'm very careful not to identify my experience with African Americans and people within Eritrea too. I don't know, Vanessa, where you get the right to do that, but I don't know. So, and I don't think it's blind support. I completely disagree. I have logics, and the majority of Eritrean people have the same logic as me. That's why we support the government. It's my belief. Otherwise, the opposition would have a lot of support and would get, what you want. But that's what I believe.
But what are you insinuating, Fitsum? Are you insinuating that the opposition doesn't get support because what they're saying isn't true? Is that what you're insinuating?
No. There's a lot of things that I want,
right,
to be done. Vanessa talked about her uncle is a journalist who was arrested in 2001. No, right. That's another topic we can talk about. That will take a lot of time. Right. So I'm not saying I'm ignoring everything. There are a lot of problems. No one is denying that, but you cannot ask me to ignore the enemy we have from outside too. Right? You're saying, she said I'm using the same terminology like George Bush. George Bush is the president of America, the most powerful country in the world. If he's talking about enemy and he's afraid, then he's using it for other purpose. Eritrea is a small country, very poor, talking about real enemy. Like, let's not compare apple and oranges, okay? And this is, people have died. There was a hot war for 3 years. I have a lot of friends who went through hell and came back, and they told me their history. I cried.
Right.
I cannot ignore all this.
Right.
I cannot ignore it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I just feel like, because I understand what you mean by we have geopolitical issues, and perhaps that's not being spoken enough or taken seriously enough, and it does affect the peace treaty. But I think at the same time, Eritreans do want to see some type of change and some type of growth within the country that we've not seen.
What do you mean?
More or less, you know what I'm saying? So maybe that's where people like Vanessa are coming from. And so if she's not talking about Wayane and you're mentioning it, but you know she's talking about something and you're not mentioning it either. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I did talk about Wayane. I said we have two enemies.
Okay,
Yeah,
no,
no,
you
no,
did. My apologies, Vanessa. That's not what I'm just saying. Like, I'm just trying to get at what he's saying. So he's trying to put an emphasis on Wayane. You understand? And he keeps putting on that, and I hear that a lot. But I also feel like we can't always use that as a scapegoat for the issues that we're dealing with. So we still got to hold it down in our country without worrying about these external factors. As much as we have to deal with them, it's like there comes a time where we have to, you know, be able to work around it and to work and deal with our own issues, you know, and that's a question that we got to ask ourselves.
Can I add something?
Can I say one more thing and then I'll be done. I'm sorry. One more thing.
You have to make it quick though. Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
45 seconds. 45.
All right. I think I'm an immigrant. English is my third language. So I think a scapegoat is putting blame on something that doesn't, the blame shouldn't go to that thing. I'm not scapegoating. I'm talking about a real thing here. You know, when we say we are surrounded, our land is occupied, we're talking about real things. The no peace, no war has destroyed our economy. People have shortages. That starts corruption. People have to worry about their children eating food, buying them clothes. These are real things. Like, it's not a scapegoat. I mean, come on. That's the last thing I'm gonna have to say.
Okay, thank you for some. Thank you.
Go with
Martha.
I think it was Martha's turn to talk. It
Go.
was Martha's turn to talk, guys.
I just wanted to touch in on one thing. When it comes to the privilege, Fitsum, I think they're talking about the severity of what do you see in your eyes as how bad is the problem in Eritrea, you know? And whether you see it on a high level, mid-level, or low level, I'm pretty sure all of us receive very diverse sense of information that allows our perception to be shaped. But I think that's what the privilege was being pertained to. And it's like you have a group of people who think, and this isn't, and this isn't privilege like in the sense that, you know, you're above or anything like that. It's more like, what are you seeing, right, that I'm seeing differently? And how can we align? Like, because we can't both just be seeing two different things and it's the same picture. But it can definitely be perceived in two different fashions based on the information that's given and not given. So I think that's where the privilege was coming from again. Like I said, I've been on both spectrums to the point where now I'm more in the middle. And my primary focus is how can we bring everybody together to get exactly what we want? Because everybody wants great for our country. But again, we need to have a uniformed agenda in order to actually progress in a substantial way. I think your main concern and I understand why, is the external forces that are maybe trying to tamper with our, you know, sovereignty altogether. I think that's been kind of the rhetoric really that's been used throughout our liberation and just the Eritrean history altogether. Like, maintain the land to maintain its identity. And that matters a lot, right? But also internally, are there some areas of opportunities where we can really improve things? And how do we go about it? Because again, both parties, you know, left, right, up, down, whatever, they care for our country. But again, we have to have a common middle ground where we come together and align both parties' perception to see if there's really a problem that needs to be addressed or areas of opportunities. Again, we go ahead and address them and merge our perspectives and what we see, because again, our motive is to care for our country. We're not wrong for that. But again, let's try to come together and do it together. That's all I wanted to add. But as far as the privilege goes, I think that's something I've seen on both parties. They see two different things, but like I said, let's merge the perspectives to get a desired outcome.
Thank you, Martha.
Can I add one thing, please?
I'm sorry, say that again. Would you say Optum?
Can I add something?
We just got to go to the audience.
Okay.
I want to give it to you, but like, we'll definitely, I feel like we had a good interaction today. We'll probably do something like this again. And hopefully, we tried to get as many people on the, who would identify as pro, but last minute, they did pull out. But hopefully the ones who are watching will join and they'll see that this is a conducive, type of dialogue.
Yeah. Futsum, we appreciate you coming out and,
you held it down. You held it down. I want to go to what's her name? Fanan. There's a question. Talks about colorism in Eritrea is an issue, and it's normalized by the Eritrean population. How can we support BLM movements in the U.S. and in the West and not address the anti-Black stereotypes among Eritreans?
So wait, sorry, can you repeat that again? Because it was cutting in and out, so I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear you.
I'll say it again. Colorism in Eritrea is an issue and normalized by the Eritrean population. How can we support the BLM movement in the U.S. and in the West and not address the anti-Black stereotypes among Eritreans?
Okay, good question. I think in Canada, I can speak for Canada, we've experienced racism, and I think talking about how Eritrean men are experiencing the brutality from police officers, starting with our people first and asking questions and saying, have we experienced this? Eritrean men get tickets too for like no common reason. Tickets stop by. I've experienced it with cops. I mean, there's good cops, but I think starting with our community, and I think people now are realizing that it's affecting them too. We're not only indirectly affected, but we are directly getting affected. So I think understanding that, educating ourselves, we have to do the part too of educating our parents. Like, they need to hear what we have to say, and just knowing our history. Like, they need to understand. It's not that they don't know it, but I think it's time now. Like, if you've been here for 20, 30 years, I think it's time for you to keep an open mind that it is happening to young Eritrean men and women as well in the workplace, and otherwise. So yeah, I think just having that discussion and just spreading that word. So
okay.
We have to keep the time limit. Yeah. I want to ask Haptone the same question. Colorism in Eritrea is an issue normalized by the Eritrean population. How can we support BLM movements in the U.S. and abroad and not address the anti-Black stereotypes among Eritreans?
Knowledge, just knowledge, in education, right? So in Eritrea, this is a country that's been colonized by Italy for 51 years, and it was exploitive. And people tend to sugarcoat, Italian colonialism, but it was violent. It was violent, and the agenda of the Italians were to repeat what happened in America with the Native Americans in Eritrea. So knowledge and just education. There's definitely a need for education of our parents' generation. In regards to colorism, and in regards to the fact that a lot of our saints are white, and a lot of our Jesus pictures are white. Our pictures of Mary's like a blue-eyed, blonde-haired lady. So we need to address that. We need to discuss that in just the knowledge and education.
Okay. So you have a question from the audience. It says, please ask Futsum how he knows what the masses feel about anything when there's absolutely no freedom of speech back home. What pool, statistics, what interview, what metric is he using? That was from the audience.
That's a good question. Their action. I've had Someone said earlier, no one talks politics in Eritrea. The whole 1 year I was talking politics with everybody. Different kind of views. I don't know how it was before I went there, but when I was there for a year to do my service, we talked politics the whole year. Everybody has a gun.
Fitzum, you did time in Sawa?
That was my plan. That was my plan, brother. I went there to do Sawa and teach in Sawa, but they said I came a little late. The program has already started, and they said I should teach one of the colleges in Asmara, and I regret it. I should have fought. I would have less guilty feeling. We all have as Eritreans, probably, if I did that. But these people, they can overthrow the government. I can ask the questioner the same question. How do you know they were opposed? Have you done a poll? People may, we've talked about everything, and these people have guns. Like a government that is afraid of its people will not give the people guns. The government know the people understand what the problem is, and the people understand throughout. I've learned a lot. If you talk to me before I went to Eritrea and then after I came out of Eritrea, I'm a completely different person.
But Shabia is strong. You think this could be overthrown like that? Lots of experience with some.
The Shabia did not come from Mars. Shabia are Eritrean people, okay? So if the Eritrean people, Shabia, they're Eritreans. If the people don't support them, they will not be there. They will go tomorrow. That's my answer to the questionnaire.
I think so. Okay, that's interesting. I never heard that.
I know Mahata put a request to respond. Feel free.
Yeah, I mean, what you said, Futsum. I mean, there is no recourse. What the people can't act, and like you're saying, the people would overthrow the government. Like they're opting to take their chances and go on a fishing boat and cross the Mediterranean Sea or get their get their organs harvested. And the Eritrean government does not try to address these issues at all. So when you say that, they would overthrow it, like there's also like a mental prison in Eritrea. People know the limitations of what they can say and what they can't say, who they're going to talk to, who they're not going to talk to. And people are showing this with their actions. They might not be taking arms, but any whiff of dissent gets snuffed out in Eritrea, whether it was the Islamic school, anything that does not adhere to the strict principles of the government gets stamped out. And so instead the people elect to take their chances and leave. So I don't know what you're saying. The people would overthrow it. They're crossing over in droves.
Thank you very much.
Wants to speak. I would answer, but
can I go next? So
let me go to the next question. So just to keep it moving.
Why can't I ask the question though? I have a question.
For who?
For Fitzum. But it's okay if you're just going to the question.
Yes, we'll have this discussion.
Can't handle the heat. That's cool. That's cool.
Thank you. All right.
Go ahead, ask that question. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, fine.
Go for it.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question for Fitzum. So when Abiy came to Eritrea and they had a whole feast and celebration, Isaiah said, "I kasarnan. Dohona nagarsi I kasarnan. I kodalanan I kasarnan." How do you feel about that when Isaiah says that I kasarnan?
I mean, Kasirnalan, a lot of people have died. From what point of view, what he meant? Someone needs to ask him, explain further. I don't know what he meant. If I ask him, do you mean the people who died? Isn't that Kisara? It is. So I don't know what he meant. I don't know what he meant. But since I have the microphone, look at us, all of us. My parents migrated during the 30 Years' War instead of fighting. my uncles, there's only one left. You know, just because you leave the country, it doesn't mean the cause is wrong. It's hard. My parents left, my father left, and his brothers, and my mother was the only daughter. But her uncles and stuff, a lot of people have died. And I migrated to the Kenya. We didn't go to Eritrea just because I am selfish. Don't equate that with the with the cause that's happening in Eritrea.
Oh, I'm not calling you selfish.
No, I'm not talking about you, Fanan. I'm talking about the comment that was made earlier. They're saying people are leaving. Of course, people are leaving stuff. If I was there, I would leave too. There are people who left, who fought in the war, who left. They're my bishops. You know, that doesn't say, that's not, that argument doesn't lead to conclusion that the cause is wrong. That's illogical. That's what I want to say.
Okay, can I ask you one more question?
Yes, you did not say that, Fanan. That was not a response for you, okay? But yeah, go ahead. If they're okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so when Abiy won the Nobel Peace Prize, okay, Isaias was there. And then Isaias, he said to him, do you want to speak on behalf of Eritrea? And then he said, no, Issaha tazarab, Issaha wakil kanna laha. Na'aha hibaka lahu. Issaha yaha tawakkilana. Iluwo Abiy.
What does that mean in English? For everyone?
It means you can speak on behalf of us. You're kind of like you're in charge of us. You speak on behalf of the Eritrean people. Okay. So my question to Futsum is, what was your thoughts when Isaias was saying that to an Ethiopian leader, which is not deserving of the Nobel Peace Prize, and I'll say that publicly, and he said, "Wakil kana lahamo isha kandana tazarab kullo."
The Ethiopians were very happy about that Peace Prize, huh?
Well, I ain't happy about that, and I'll say that clearly. But
so, you know, you can always bring those kind of things he said. Still ask him what he meant. Dr. Abiy does not represent us. If he goes against Eritrean interest, we would be against it. The government would be against it. They're negotiating how to move forward. If Dr. Abiy represents us, there will not be any negotiation, okay? He would say, this is what I want, and it happens. I don't know, maybe it's Eritrean culture. When they're happy, you know, like maybe it's a happy speak. I don't know. Maybe someone who was born, raised in Eritrea should speak on it. I don't know. Maybe someone should ask him. But I'll tell you for sure, Dr. Abiy does not represent Eritrea. Isaias knows, everybody knows. As a government, as a YPFDJ member, I know. Like, no one represents our interests, only us. Like, that's goes without saying.
Yeah.
So I just want to say one thing, right? To play devil's advocate, and also I like words to me. I get it. I can see why. Okay, this is with that thing that Isai said, right? To those who feel excluded, it feels like a slap in the face, because it's like all we want to do is participate. And he says this to someone who was our sworn enemy, and like, and this, on this flip side, you know how it is. Even in our, like, even though I grew up here, I know that when they're in a good mood, you know, like, I get the cultural context of that, right? But the way people internalize that information, right? Like, say for someone who might be pro, would be like, oh, that's like. Because if you look at their, he'll be like, well, like, I talk to people about this, right? If you look at his action when he said that, you know, he was like saying, oh, you know, like, even Abiy was like, no, right? So for me, like, you can interpret it many ways, right? And so I do understand the feeling, particularly for people who feel excluded. It feels like a slap in the face. You know what I mean? And you know, you can say he should have been sensitive towards that, or this and that. You know, like, you can criticize it. You can sensationalize it, right? You know what I mean? So, like, the thing is that for me, like, those little things, I can ignore that. Why? Because it's just words. I'm talking about, like, I want us to talk about our real issues, right? To me, that's like political brownie points. No offense. I want to talk about the real issues. So when people talk about, like, oh, this is what he said, if we argue about that, are we talking about the issue? I think we could all agree we're not. Mishka?
Yes, we are. I think so.
You think so?
I think, of course, like, okay, this is just my perspective. We get access to Isaiah Porter how often? Like, how often does he do live interviews on Edit TV, which are usually, pre-recorded anyways? How often does he make official statements? How often does he do town hall meetings? How often do we, or like, do the Eritrean people living in Eritrea get access to their president? How often? I mean, we all can count on one hand, I guess, in a year, something like that. So when he makes statements like these, he's a president. He's not a kindergarten child. He speaks Tigrinya. He knows exactly what he was saying. It wasn't a misunderstanding in terms of a linguistical issue or whatever. He was making a statement alongside a fellow politician who happens to be the president of our neighboring country, the same country that we fought for independence for 30 years, the same country that has been the reason for this, no peace, no war situation that has justified the entire status quo in Eritrea. He's not speaking to the president of Sudan or Somalia. He's speaking to the Ethiopian president. And when he makes a statement like that, he needs to be held accountable for it. And when people say, oh, well, you can just ask him, you can just try to clarify, who's going to ask him? Should I go down to Eritrea and ask him? Should I ask my cousins who are in national service in Eritrea to send him a letter to go visit the presidential house or something? That is not an option. And I understand that, Putum, we're not holding you accountable for the like as an individual for the statements of the president. But you need to also understand you're not here as an independent agent. You're here as a member of YPFDJ, which you stated yourself. I wouldn't have put that upon you just because you happen to have governmental supportive views. But you did represent yourself as a member of the YPFDJ group, which is officially the group of the youth party of the PFDJ, political party, which is headed by Isaiah Porter, which is why I think it's more than valid to discuss this point. And I think he didn't just say that out of the blue. It was a part of a wider pattern that has been happening since the peace deal in July 2018. Since 2018, there has been a shift in the justification that has been used. I was at the UN to speak alongside the Eritrean regime representatives, and I was nervous because I was like, what arguments are they going to use now? Maybe they have a new, threat that we haven't been informed about, and they came with nothing. The entire council, the same council that the Eritrean regime has criticized, but now are a part of, and also have all the, the government supporting them, have been saying that, they're in a transitional period, saying that this threat does no longer exist. So I think we need to put, this person in perspective. This person is the president. He said what he said, and it's been a part of this whole thing, saying the war is over, we're now transitioning into better days. But we haven't seen a transition. And I think to say that this is not a part of a wider system is just wrong.
Thank you, Vanessa. Okay, so moving forward, Martha, I want to ask you this question, and then Sammy. This is from one of the audiences. They said, what is the purpose of fighting for Black Lives Matter if you can't fight for justice for those who have been in the Eritrean prison for 20 years plus? Seems hypocritical to me. Justice is a basic human right. Eritreans need education on what justice means. This is from the audience. If you have an answer, feel free to comment on that.
Yeah, I think this goes back to the whole point of, what's the point of having a country if the people inside of it, for one reason or another, either fleeing or they're just having a lot of conflict where they feel like they're not really being heard. And mind you, again, Fitzum, you're not like the only person in here that's been part of YPFDJ. I grew up in Philly and I was part of it. And again, I didn't necessarily detach until I went off to college for no reason in particular, but again, just kind of having a more worldly kind of like complete perspective on like what's going on in Eritrea in general. Like I said, there's no point in I mean, again, having a country if it's not a place where people want to necessarily stay 100% of the way. When it comes to like the Black Lives Matter movement, like I said, it's something that we can benefit on a global scale. If we help get rid of like anti-Blackness, it allows you to, mobilize in so much more different countries where it's not necessarily a common enemy against you or a spoken, enemy that isn't really like addressed. So like I said, I believe Eritrea has areas of opportunity to improve not only internally, but also externally. But again, let's make sure that we have a sovereign land where people want to be and not feel like they kind of have to be. And I love my country just as much as everybody else. And like I said, it goes all in full circle because, again, we're kind of fighting a Eurocentric standard of dominance that's been put on the entire globe. So like I said, again, there's good fight that could be done on a national base in America, but also we need to address some areas of opportunity that we have in Eritrea as well and not feed into the fire that could cause more division.
I have a question.
Thank you, Martha.
I'd love to ask, please. Do you feel that like economic prosperity within the Black community in America and the Eritrea and Eritrea would help with some of these type of with oppression?
Absolutely. So I believe that in Eritrea, I mean, we've always been very good about group economics because, granted, most of the people there are Eritrean, so it's a lot easier for more people to identify with that. However, when it comes to, group economics in America, due to the systematic racism and the destruction that's been caused on the Black family from all different angles, it's a little bit more harder for them like here. And like I said, group economics, I think, is the way out for a lot of the systemic, just complete ridiculousness that African Americans have to go through in this country. Because again, we can't keep waiting for a government to save you when, you've had pretty much an insidious historical context with the same entity. And again, every other group has come to this country and liberated themselves financially, which is why, again, when they want certain legislation to be passed, it gets passed in their favor. I mean, when it comes to Jewish people, they got reparations. When it comes to Japanese, they got reparations for the time they spent in concentration camps. But again, the same people, African Americans, who helped pioneer the liberation of Hispanics, the LGBT community, white women, and every other, oppressed group, they have yet to see the liberties that they fought for. And a lot of that is because of division that's within their community, especially when it comes to economic division. Because like I said, the Black dollar clearly, as much as, people want to make it seem like Black people, maybe may not have the most money. That's not true. The Black dollar is very much, it's coming in one way or another. But the problem is leaving out the community and not circulating within the Black community. So it leaves room for other people who don't look like you to come and build wealth in your neighborhood and then leave and go live in theirs in prosperity. And I think we need to focus on group economics in America so that we can find our own prosperity.
10 seconds, Martha.
I love it, man. Great answer. Like, that was just so well said. Loving the civil dialogue. Great job, y'all.
Can I say something about that, Fanan, or am I crossing the line?
Yeah. I was the next person. Just wait.
Go ahead, Sammy. Take the mic, man.
Okay. So, what's his? Can you? What the question was? From the audience that it's hypocritical to be for, what was it, to be for Black Lives Matter while at the same time. Can you repeat it?
Give me 1 second.
Because there's layers to it.
What is the so this is the question posed by the audience. It was, what is the purpose of fighting justice for Black Lives Matter if you can't fight for those who have been in the Eritrean prison for 20 plus years? It seems hypocritical to me. Justice is a basic human right. Eritreans need, and this is his comment, he says, Eritreans need education on what justice is and means. Okay, you see, there's two separate. These are segmented battles amongst our identity. As in my Black identity, yes, Black Lives Matter. I have to fight this. In my Eritrean identity, that's a whole different. There's so much to unpack, and the system and the structure over there doesn't really give you ample moving time. I'm sorry. Doesn't give you the maneuverability to have that fight. Realistically, like you want, how can you compare the battles? Like it's a difference between a battle on ground and a battle in air. We can fight Black Lives Matter. We can do this on the ground. This is a ground assault. Eritrea, that's an air assault. We don't have warplanes, we don't have jets, we can't fight that battle especially from here. If the best you can do, I think y'all all need to focus your energy and bring all that momentum to, if you're gonna do it, go back, not go to Eritrea, but go to Sudan, go to Ethiopia, and
set up a base of operations, and if you really wanted to do things in the sure shot way without using diplomacy to use like absolute like liberation, then you need to do. You hold on.
I want to ask you something.
Hold on, yeah, but let me at least finish my point, bro.
All right, go ahead.
So if you're gonna fight an assault in the sky, then you have the weaponry needed to do so. You can't say it's hypocritical because we're not even over there to fight that battle. We can only fight the battle we have in front of us.
Sammy, do you think that we are being opportunists by relating this discussion to the Black Lives Matter movement in America?
You know, we have to also I gotta unpack that. We have to remember how the mere mention of whether or not like Eritreans and Ethiopians, Habesha people should be part of the Black Lives Matter movement. If we should be fighting for this, and obviously in America we should be, but can ask another question. If in my personal experience, honestly, African Americans didn't consider me Black until. It's a hit and miss. Sometimes to this day, it's a hit and miss whether or not I'm Black, like I'm Black enough. And growing up, I've had this debate with many people. So
that's not what I'm asking.
Wait, I'm gonna get exactly where you're going. Hold on. And even in places in DC, you would see, Habesha people are usually seen by African Americans as like one of the first few gentrifiers. Immigrant gentrifiers of the DMV area, because they stay together. It was immigrants that stayed together. They don't let anyone in. That's how they view it. They don't let no one into their culture. They stick with each other. They keep the dollar in the neighborhood. They saw us as like immigrant Black Jews or something. Like how they see it like that. When in fact there's just a bunch of people coming from another place, and they only need the linguistic and cultural things is what people kept in those circles. So. Having
that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, let me talk. What I'm asking is right now we got the Black Lives Matter is what's going sensational right now. It's viral. That's what everyone's talking about. And what you see is you got a lot of companies jumping on board, relating things to Black Lives Matter. You got all types of things. So as Eritreans, do you think that we should even be relating the discussion of Eritrea to Black Lives Matter? That's what I'm asking you, my brother.
There's a big, but it's a huge different, like that. These are totally separate battles that I cannot see the intersection, because these are seriously different. Like it comes from a different place. History is just completely different. We can use the momentum, of course, and use it as a springboard like anything else, but it's not the same battle. I think Eritreans here, we need to fight in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, because their success, our success is dependent upon all of our success as a collective, not as just an ethnic unit, but as a collective. It's more appropriate to, reasonably. The cops don't give a shit if you're Habesha or if they're not going to ask you whether or not. They're just going to beat you up. That's kind of how it is. So, yeah, Black Lives Matter. What else I can say?
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you very much, bro.
Can you disagree, or are we moving on?
Vanessa, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go
asking the moderators.
Do your thing.
Okay, here's the thing that I believe. Personally, I'm not American, so I think obviously I just want to make that clear. I don't want to appropriate anyone else's struggle or thing. And I personally, I've lived in the US for a very short time, for a year, and from my perspective, Eritrean Americans suffer on there's. I don't want to exclude them from the suffering just because of their the different history and the different ways that they've been there. That's just my perspective. So big ups to every one of you for surviving in such a hostile country towards Black people in general. But from my perspective, what's happening in the United States and the struggle there is about people's rights being violated. In the US, we have a white supremacist system that has enabled the system to continue and affect Black people and other people of color. And the fight there is about their rights, their dignity, and their ability to actually survive and live. And to then say that the situation in Eritrea is different just because the color of the skin of the people who are oppressing the people is different speaks more about, your ideology and maybe like a wider discussion that you want to have about specifically white supremacy. But I think what's happening in the US is how many of these people that we're fighting for, and that even in solidarity in Sweden, we were marching and all of that, were killed by Black police officers, for example. This is about oppression. In the United States, it's upheld by white supremacy. In Europe, it's upheld by white supremacy. In Africa, it used to be white supremacy. Now the color of the skin of our oppressors have changed from Italians to Ethiopians, from Ethiopians to Eritreans. So I think the wider discussion here is about justice, is about human rights, about human dignity. And to even, if you want to make it about white supremacy, who's funding the Eritrean government right now, except for the people voluntarily paying 2% and the people involuntarily paying 2%. The EU has paid more than 100 million euros just in the past 5 years. Look at all these other countries. How much is the UAE paying to have access to the borders of Assab and just in Eritrea to shoot and kill people in the war of fucking Yemen? Sorry for swearing, but that's where the money is coming to in Eritrea right now. It's not about self-reliance anymore. That was rhetoric that was used to convince and maybe get some people to support them, but that has been complete lies. That's not rooted in any kind of truth. And this is not even me speaking about WikiLeaks document that leaked a few years ago about sounding like a conspiracy theories. These are real statements coming out from institutions that have spread this out. The Eritrean regime has not denied any of this. So the color of the skin of our oppressors are Eritreans. It's our own people killing our own people, which hurts. But even then, they're being supported by white institutions because they refuse to allow migrants from coming in. The reason why the EU is giving money to Eritrea is because they want to push migration. They want to curb migration.
15 seconds.
And in that way, it is about white supremacy. But even then, even if you want to overcomplicate things, it's about two governments preserving their own interests, which is whatever interest that they have, oppressing their people. Of course, Black Lives Matter is the same in the Eritrean context, and the same in the Sudanese context. It's the same in the Ethiopian context, the same in the Swedish context. It's about people oppressing other people, period.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you very much for that point. I had no idea that you cursed. Like, you seem so innocent. But, it's all good. No, great point, though. Great. Thank you. Go ahead, Shewit. Take the mic.
What I want to do is we've been online for a long time, and so I think it's appropriate to end on that note. I want to thank everybody for coming on. This was a great discussion. The goal of this type of discussion is basically to have an understanding of each other's points, at least. We may not agree, but the dialogue has to happen, and eventually, as Eritreans, we'll find a solution, right? And so, as young people, right, as future leaders, I want to thank all of you guys for coming here and being willing to, talk with each other and taking turns the way you did. It was, for as passionate as it was really great. So yeah, Tech, you have anything to say?
No, love it. You guys did great. Everything was so civil. The discussion. I want to thank everyone for coming out. It's not easy to come together like when we have like different views and for us to come together and have this civil discussion. I think this is history. I think that's what we did here. We're not seeing this a lot in the Eritrean community. So kudos to you guys. You guys are a part of history. Just remember that. All right, y'all. So yeah, great job, everyone.
And Putzman, you're low-key kind of solo, but I appreciate you for sticking through and being part of this discussion, because it was very difficult to have the wide spectrum that we were seeking. And so yeah, I appreciate you. I know you had a lot of questions at you, but thank you for coming on and staying on too.
Yeah, Fitzum, man, you held it down, bro. We appreciate you. Hopefully we can have you. You can come again, bro. You're always welcome. All right. Okay, Fitzum.
Thank you guys. I had a beautiful discussion. I'm always happy when I talk about Eritrea with anyone.
Right.
I encourage more YPFDJ members to join in the discussion. Eritrea belongs to all Eritreans. It doesn't belong to YPFDJ. PFDJ belongs to all Eritreans, right?
Listen, bro. Like, you gotta understand. Like, all of us, we all have history within this Eritrean thing, like the war and and all these things. Our families were all involved. You know, I could say that for Vanessa, I could say that for Marta, for Sammy, for myself, for Shewit. You know, we've all been involved in this thing. We've all been affected by this thing. So at some point, we got to have some type of common understanding. And that's just how I feel about that. So I'm hoping
No.
you know what I mean?
No, I guess maybe you took, when I said I'm happy to talk about Eritrea with anyone, I just meant to say opposition. That's all. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not the power who decide who's Eritrean or who's not Eritrean. I was born in Ethiopia. I was in Kenya, and here I am. I've only been to Eritrea one time to serve. And that's all I meant. You don't have to explain yourself, man. You don't have to explain
all of us, we came from an Adi, you know. I'm from Adenamen and Labret. Where are you guys from? You know, that's. You know.
Let's not even get into that detail. That's what we're trying to break.
Away.
I'm playing with
if I could add one thing.
Yeah.
Could I add one thing? When I mentioned I would love to see more PFDJ members join. I mean, my personal opinion is there's a privilege Eritrean government supporters have where they feel like we don't have to answer to anybody. You know, Eritrea belongs to Isaias Afwerki and his crew, and I'm asking for a dialogue, for debate. You know, this is our family. You know, this is our. You know, my father was in Eritrea from '96 into 2012. You know, so it's just like, I would love to discuss them and love to see their side of how their side and their beliefs, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This live debate was made possible by our sponsor, Jonas Woldu from Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Jonas can help you find your new home or help you sell your existing one. Give Jonas a call today at 702-750-5450 if you have any questions about the Nevada real estate market. And so on that note, once again, thank you to all the viewers who watched and stuck around with us. Thank you. And to all and everybody here, you know, some, I don't know if everybody's fathers around or alive or whatever, but, you know, on Father's Day, you know, take the time out that you did. You know, I really appreciate y'all. The day after Martyrs Day as well, to even have this discussion, a very sensitive discussion to a degree, that you guys are all willing. I appreciate y'all. And yeah, thank you.
Sure. Happy Martyrs Day again.
Happy Martyrs Day.
You know,
and happy Father's Day.
salute to all my Eritreans, man.
Yeah, and happy Refugees Day, you know.
Happy Refugees Day, yes.
Take care.
All right, guys. Bye. Nice talking to you guys. Bye-bye.
All right.
Ciao.
High five.
Ciao.
زخ خيدي رئيو سلخو كأننا بمعقار نشتوي كلخو شم عبري هلو نخبرت السمكار سوق بطاي كملو نبرخا تزلني تجدان عالكار زخ خيدي رئيو سلخو كأننا بمعقار نشتوي كلخو شم عبري هلو نخبرت السمكار سوق بطاي كملو نبرخا تزبلني تجرقان علاقة نقر ولاديت حوج وج قبلكي قدني خون ونكسر معكي تشاحة ورحي أما تنكتيركي كدت عمت وناوزي بانكي قناد جيجنا تحبني إخي ولادكي موتن تاريخ بتفلكي تنقل ماما أنا أقللكي نزقك حزين ماما تاريخنا يولادكي كيف تنكل تقسم ماما بجلفة أخباري تبعني قرات بعنتبو وتطعم بعني حمس حبو نبر قول دخم زي عجب ترقف وعيلهم كمغطير تقرب أرتتتح قول أطمئني عسب جيقنا ودخنا يتنحن شيء حلفو ماما تنايها أقل مقصد
ناي بحثني وسيخا حساس لدعيني نسيخا ونكتكا قديف كان بيني ولودي 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 أنت عيش الودي
تبلا الله أديها صنبصا تبلا الله أديها صبرمي كورئيدا تبلا الله قاتلو مريت مسقاتلو سماي بارئنا توكتي مسقاوكاو تتحاي تنكل مسواتو تنيف كنسبني ساعة نتأماي ماما بزاي تقيموني تبلا الله أديها صنبصا تبلا الله أديها صبرمي كورئيدا تبلا الله
ولوديخا ولودناي بحثني وسيخا حساس لدعيني نسيخا ونكتكا كان بيني ولودي 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 أنت عيش الودي أنا قبلت أنا ركض بهدك أنا خافكوني بالرج أنا سخا لبع بخا هذا ركاب حرخا حابني نوسي ولودي نعي مسوات
تبلا الله أديها صنبصا تبلا الله أديها صبرمي كورئيدا تبلا الله أديها صبرمي ينبصا 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 تبلا الله أديها صبرمي ينبصا